The Kinderhook plates were created in 1843 by 3 men in Kinderhook, Illinois, as a hoax on the LDS Church. They were 6 small bell-shaped plates, 3 inches tall and made of brass with meaningless markings engraved on both sides. These plates were meant to imitate the gold plates that Joseph Smith had claimed he found in a hill, and translated by the power of God. In 1842, there were around 100 members of the Mormon Church in Kinderhook, Illinois. At the time, the Mormon missionaries were preaching a message that truth would spring up out of the earth, which was a missionary message created by the Mormon apostle Parley Pratt. 2 of Kinderhook's residents, Wilburn Fugate and Robert Wiley, heard this message from Mormon missionaries and decided to prove the prophecy by way of a joke, and play a prank on the church and Joseph Smith. They had a blacksmith named Bridge Whitten create the plates in 1843. Later in 1879, Wilburn Fugate explained how this was done. He said, "Bridge Whitten cut them out of some pieces of copper. Wiley and I made the hieroglyphics by making impressions on beeswax, and filling them with acid and putting it on the plates. When they were finished, we put them together with rust made of nitric acid, old iron and lead, and bound them with a piece of hoop iron, covering them completely with rust." Also in 1879, Wilbur explained, "They are a humbug gotten up by Robert Wiley, Bridge Whitten and myself. We read in Pratt's prophecy that truth is yet to spring out of the earth. We concluded to prove the prophecy by way of a joke. Bridge Whitten cut them out of some pieces of copper. Wiley and I made the hieroglyphics by making impressions on beeswax, and filling them with acid and putting it on the plates. Our plans worked admirably." On the following morning, quite a number of citizens were there to assist in the search, there being 2 Mormon elders present. The Mormons wanted to take the plates to Joe Smith, but we refused to let them go. Some time afterward, a man assuming the name of Savage, of Quincy, borrowed the plates of Wiley to show to his literary friends there, and took them to Joe Smith. In April 1843, Robert Wiley dug a deep, 10-foot hole in an Indian mound nearby. Then he enlisted the help of others to help him. They dug deeper and found the plates along with some human bones. The plates were exhibited in Kinderhook for a short time before being sent to Joseph Smith to see if he could translate them. There was much excitement and anticipation in the church about the plates and their translation. In the May 1, 1843 edition of the LDS publication The Times and Seasons, it said, "Some pretend to say that Smith, the Mormon leader, has the ability to read them. If he has, he will confer a great favor on the public by removing the mystery which hangs over them." We learn there was a Mormon present when the plates were found, who, it is said, leaped for joy at the discovery, and remarked that it would go to prove the authenticity of the Book of Mormon, which it undoubtedly will. Also, Parley Pratt wrote that the engravings on the plates were Egyptian and contained the genealogy of one of the ancient Jaredites back to Ham, the son of Noah. In June 1843, Mormon apostles John Taylor and Wilford Woodruff, who were the editors of the Nauvoo Neighbor, wrote in an article, "The contents of the plates, together with a facsimile of the same, will be published in the Times and Seasons, as soon as the translation is completed." On May 3, 1843, Brigham Young, a Mormon apostle and the next Mormon prophet, was in Joseph Smith's house examining the Kinderhook plates. This image shows a tracing of one of the plates that Young made in his journal. Inside of the tracing he wrote, "I took this at Joseph Smith's house, found near Quincy." On May 7, 1843, Parley Pratt sent a letter to a friend and wrote, "A large number of citizens have seen them and compared the characters with those on the Egyptian papyrus which is now in this city." Also in May 1843, the New York Herald published an article that stated, "The plates are evidently brass and are covered on both sides with hieroglyphics. They were brought up and shown to Joseph Smith. He compared them, in my presence, with his Egyptian alphabet, and they are evidently the same characters. He therefore will be able to decipher them. You may expect something very remarkable pretty soon." Although the Kinderhook plates were a hoax, Joseph Smith translated a portion of them anyway. Also in May of 1843, Joseph Smith's personal secretary William Clayton wrote that Joseph Smith sent for his Hebrew Bible and lexicon, apparently intending to translate the plates using those items instead of his peepstone he had used to translate the gold plates. Clayton also wrote, "I have seen 6 brass plates covered with ancient characters of language, containing from 30 to 40 on each side of the plates. President Joseph has translated a portion and says they contain the history of the person with whom they were found, and he was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth." This passage in Clayton's journal was trusted by the leadership of the LDS Church, and included in the history of the church volumes. Smith translated a character off of one of the plates that resembled one of the characters found on the Egyptian papyri, from which he had claimed to translate by the power of God, and became the Book of Abraham in Mormon scripture. Joseph and his scribes created many documents allegedly by the power of God to translate that Egyptian papyri. However, his translation of that papyri is regarded as nonsense by modern Egyptian scholars. One of these documents that Joseph created and used to translate the papyri is known as Grammar and Alphabet of the Egyptian Language. Iorwerth Iden Stephen Edwards was an English Egyptologist and curator, and considered to be a leading expert on the pyramids. He said concerning this document that it is largely a piece of imagination, and lacking in any kind of scientific value. Hugh Nibley, who was a church scholar and professor at Brigham Young University, said, "The grammar and alphabet of the Egyptian language is of no practical value whatever." This document is the lexicon that Joseph referred to when sending for his Hebrew Bible and lexicon to use for the translation. A character on the Kinderhook plates vaguely resembles a character on Joseph's lexicon. However, the translation on Joseph's lexicon is an incorrect translation of that Egyptian character, as shown here. And none of the characters on the Kinderhook plates are ancient Egyptian characters, because they are meaningless and were only made as a hoax. An article in the Warsaw Signal on May 22, 1844, refers to Joseph Smith's efforts to translate the Kinderhook plates. It said, "These plates were found about 11 feet under the surface of a long mound in the vicinity of Kinderhook, Pike County, Illinois. On removing the dust that had collected about them, hieroglyphics were found engraved, the meaning of which no one was able to divine. They were sent to Joe Smith in order to get his opinion of their meaning. Joe has a facsimile taken and engraved on wood, and it now appears that he is busy in translating them. The new work which Joe is about to issue as a translation of these plates will be nothing more nor less than a sequel to the Book of Mormon." Then about 2 weeks later, on June 7, 1844, Joseph Smith was killed before he finished his translation. However, the LDS Church continued to print facsimiles and information about the Kinderhook plates in their official history of the church volumes, and in the church's Improvement Era magazine in September 1962. Also, some leaders of the church continued to promote the authenticity of the Kinderhook plates in their publications, such as Mormon apostle Mark E. Peterson, who said in his book, "Those gold plates. There are the Kinderhook plates too, found in America and now in the possession of the Chicago Historical Society." Controversy has surrounded these plates and their engravings, but most experts agree they are of ancient vintage. One of the original plates did surface in 1920 in the possession of the Chicago History Museum, but it was not examined until 1966, when Brigham Young University examined the plate and found that it matched facsimiles, but the question of whether the plate was one of the originals still existed. Finally, in 1980, the plate was examined by D. Lynn Johnson, who was a professor in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at Northwestern University. Through various scientific methods, he found that the metal composition of the plate is consistent with metals used by 19th-century blacksmiths. He also found that the engravings were etched with nitric acid. Professor Johnson also concluded that it was one of the original plates examined by Joseph Smith because a dent in the plate was drawn as part of one of the characters in a facsimile. This confirms Fugate's 1879 explanation of how the plates were made. Then in 1981, shortly after Dr. Johnson's research, the LDS Church agreed that the plates are a hoax and publicly stated, "There is no evidence that the prophet Joseph Smith ever took up the matter with the Lord, as he did when working with the Book of Mormon and the Book of Abraham." However, it is evident that Joseph Smith did translate a portion of the fake Kinderhook plates using his incorrect grammar and Egyptian alphabet document, which was originally created while writing the Book of Abraham.